Okay. All right, Kalia. So we're gonna go ahead and start with this lesson today. So yesterday and last week we were learning about older civilizations, right? So that's what we were doing. So today we're going to be doing a new topic. So today we're going to be learning about ancient Egypt. So ancient Egypt is another civilization too that was way, way, way big back before we were all even born, right? So today we're going to be going over the book. We're going to be going over some vocab words here. We're going to look at some pictures, and then after we read the book, we're going to go over and do some of the main idea and supporting details. And then when we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and write a few sentences with the picture. So after when we're done with our lesson, you're going to be able to tell me a little summary about the book, what we read about ancient Egypt. We're going to be able to identify that these pictures in here and these pictures in here are all related to ancient Egypt. And then you're also going to be able to write a few sentences, summarize what it is, and draw a picture as well, okay? So to start, we're going to be looking at these pictures right here. So all of these pictures right here, you could tell they're maybe a little bit older. So is there anything interesting, or what do you like about these pictures that you could tell me?
That the sky and that one in the middle.
This one right over here.
And the one
Do you think these pictures look cool? Do you think maybe they're a little weird, or are they things that you have seen before?
they look cool.
They look cool, right? So we see here, this is like a picture. Well, it's a statue, right? It's a statue of a person. This is like a king back in ancient Egypt. It has the face of a person, but if you look at the body, like right here, it's the body of a lion, right? So that's a lot of things that they used to have in ancient Egypt. We can see here the way they would dress, right? They would wear things on their head. They would wear different clothes. Here it looks like they have some wings, right? And these statues are really, really big. So you probably can't see them. But let me take this one out. But even if you see here, you see that there's people actually here. These are real people. So you see how big these statues are? They're really, really big. So the people here look like little ants, right? So all these things are from ancient Egypt, right? They're all really cool. See how big these pyramids are? There's little camels here. You can barely see them. So they're really, really, really big. So all these things here, they're like kings, or even these little pictures that they used to draw, right? Like hieroglyphics, that's what they're called. So that's the way they were used to communicate. Like in caves, they would draw pictures and things like that. So that's what we're going to be learning about today, okay?
Okay.
All right, so before we start with our book, we're going to go over some vocabulary words that we're going to come across on our reading. So that way when we come across them, we know what they are and what the book is really talking about, right? So the first one here we have is phora. So a phora just means a king, right? So the ancient Egyptians, they used to call, instead of saying their king or their president, they would call them a phora. And then we have preserved. So preserved means that something is treated a certain way, in a special way, to prevent it from spoiling or getting rotten, right? So like when we have food, let's pretend if people put certain chemicals or special things on them so that way they don't go bad. And then we have mummy. So a mummy is a dead body that's treated in a special way so that it won't rot, right? Have you seen a mummy before? I think we all, no? Only like fake ones, right? So that would be a mummy. That comes from the ancient Egyptians, the mummies, right? And then we have a tomb. A tomb is just a vault, a chamber, or a grave for somebody that has passed away, right? The person that died, and then they put them in their tomb. So those are just going to be our vocabulary words that we're going to have when we're reading our book, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and give you a book, and then we're going to read it together. Well, I'll read it, and then you could just go ahead and follow along, okay? And then we'll stop through the book and then maybe answer some questions if you have any, and then just look at the pictures, okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and start. It's ancient Egypt. The same thing, ancient Egypt, right? All right. A few pages. Okay, there we go. So we're going to start with the introduction, okay? So the introduction, it says, thousands of years ago, a group of people lived in the African country of Egypt, right? So before we even start the book, I totally forgot. I'm sorry. So this is one of the worksheets we're going to do after, right? So we're going to be looking for the main idea. So the main idea would be the main thing that we're talking about, what we're focusing on. So here our main idea would be ancient Egypt, right? Because that's the topic. That's what we're going to be doing. And we're just going to be maybe in our head, once we come across something that we think it's important or that we talk about, those we're going to be using later for our supporting details, okay? So we could be putting things like maybe where Egypt is at, maybe what they believed in, or things that they did, like important things like that. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and start. Okay, so we have the introduction. So thousands of years ago, a group of people lived in the African country of Egypt, right? So that tells us one thing, that Egypt is in Africa, right? So it's in the it's in Africa, so maybe that's one important thing that we could remember for later too, about where Egypt is at. So they lived on the banks of the river Nile. They were farmers and hunters. They used the river for boat travel, and they were ruled by a king called Phora. See, so that was one of our words, right? Phora. So if we look at just the picture, that just shows us a picture of the river, where water is that obviously where the Egyptians had farms and cities, so that's where they would get their water from. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and flip to the next page. Oops, it's okay. I think it just didn't stay up right. There you go. Alright, so then we have their beliefs, right? So their beliefs would be things that they believe in. Okay, so the ancient Egyptians believed that someone died. When someone died, he or she went to another world. Okay? They believed that the person's next life would be like their present life. They thought the dead person would need some tools and objects in their next life. So people were buried with many of the things that they owned. So if we look at the picture here at the bottom, there's paintings inside a tomb that show the next life, right? So they believed that when someone passed away and they died, that they were just going to go to a whole different new world and that they were going to live again. So when they would bury them, they would bury them. Let's say they didn't have cell phones back then, but let's say if somebody now did, they probably would put them their cell phone, maybe some utensils that they would need, maybe a book, maybe some clothes. So they would bury them with all their things. Okay, so we're gonna go on to the next page. Okay, so ancient Egyptians believed in a sun god. They believed that the king was related to this god. When the king died, he was given a very fancy burial. Many riches were buried with him. Queens were also given fancy burials. Okay, so we look at this picture here. That's the mummy's coffin. So it was often painted to look like the person inside. So this is actually a coffin, so there's somebody in here. But they would just make them very fancy because that was the king, and they would make sure to paint the outside so it could look like how he did when he was alive. Okay, we'll move on to the next page. After a king died, his body was preserved so that it would not rot, right? That's one of our words over here, right? Preserved, right? Which means that they put special things in it so that way it wouldn't rot. Okay. The king's body was treated with spices, oils, and other things to preserve it. People believed that this would keep his spirit alive. The preserved body was called a mummy. So we see this here. This is actually like a picture of a mummy, right? Back in the day in ancient Egypt, when they would do it, they would wrap them around in cloth, so like pieces of like kind of that look like clothes, right? Cloths, and they would just wrap them all around so that way their body wouldn't rot, right? So then you said that you've seen fake mummies, right? Do they look something similar like this? No. How do they look?
The face is showing and their skin is white.
Oh, you're right. I think the eyes show, right? And like some of the mouth shows.
And it's like talking.
You're right. A lot of kids aren't, even for Halloween, they're mummies. Okay, so now we're gonna go over to the pyramids. Okay, so the king was buried inside a huge stone structure called the pyramid. The pyramid was shaped to look like the sun's rays shining on earth. People believed that the king would go to heaven on the rays of the sun. Right? So this picture here, we have a picture of a pyramid, just like how these are here, right? So whenever a king died, they would bury them inside the pyramid. So that's how fancy their whole burial was, right? So pyramids are really, really, really big. They're huge, huge structures. Like us, if we stand next to them, we're like little ants compared to them. Okay, so we're gonna go on to the next one. Okay. So then we have pyramids took many years to build. When a king was still alive, people began building his pyramid. The stone used to make the pyramids were huge. It took hard work to get the stones out of the ground. It took harder work to move the stones to where the pyramid would be built. Some stones were moved on boats, other stones were moved over land using big sleds, right? So this picture here, can you see what they're doing? Do you know what they're doing? What do you think they're doing?
It looks like they're moving the boat.
You're right, they're moving the boat, right? And if you look inside the boat, they have well, not little, right here they look little, right? Because they're a picture, but they're really, really, really big stones to use right here. So they were going to move them so they could build the pyramid, right? So they were really, really big. So they had to move them by a boat, or they moved them by land by using big, big sleds. Okay, we're going to go on to the next page.
That page is weird. Why so dark?
I'm sorry. Oh, it's okay. It's because some of them didn't. You just, yep, set it like that. Perfect.
Oh, is that a bath? I see it.
That's a tomb, right? So it does kind of look like a bathtub in a way, but you see the person inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it says inside the pyramid was a tomb, right? This was a special room where the king's body was placed. Many objects were put in the tomb. There were statues, paintings, and many gold things. So this is a whole big room where the king was buried, right? So this is his tomb, and this is where he was buried. And then we have all the pictures here that they would draw and the paintings, right? So this is a tomb of King Tut. That was his name, King Tut, right there. Yeah, King Tut. Yeah, and then you could just, it's gonna be this one right here. It's okay if this one comes out a little bit. If this comes out, it's okay. You just picture. All right. So many hidden tunnels and rooms were built inside a pyramid. They were built to trick anyone who tried to steal things from the tombs. Giant stones were put in front of the doorway of a real tomb. They were used to keep out the thieves. Still, almost every king's tomb was robbed over the years, but the pyramids still stand. So this little triangle here that we have, it shows us ways that you were able to get to the tomb inside, right? And like they said, they built many different little places so that it could trick people from stopping them to get into the real tomb so they wouldn't steal the stuff. Okay, so we're gonna go on to the next page. Alright, so the Great Pyramid of Giza is a famous pyramid. Yep, it's just like those, right? Just like those pyramids. And oh, like this one right here. You're right. Alright, so it was built for king. It has more than 2 million blocks of stone. Other pyramids near it were built for the king's relative. A statue called Syntax. Guards of all pyramids. So it's pretty much a face of a king with the body of a lion, right? Like this one that we had talked about. And then the other ones were built for relatives, which means like for his family members, right? Alright, and then this is going to be our last page, our conclusion. So studying the ancient Egyptian teaches us a lot about life long ago. We can learn about the tools that they were used, the clothes that they wear, and we could also learn about the food they ate and the gods they worshipped by studying ancient Egyptians. And we know that they had a great culture. So just again in the picture, it shows us another statue, right? This is of Ramses. This is Ramses, another Egyptian god that was there. So a lot of people, they built statues and then they just made them look like the kings, right? So that's the end of our story. So do you have any questions or any comments or any thoughts you had about the story? About
they have their like own space, like
like in the pyramids?
Like, yeah.
Well, remember in the book it said that the pyramids, they used to bury the king in there. So they had to build like maybe hidden doors that they could go inside, and then they would put that tomb in here. So remember when we looked at the picture that you said, oh, why is this one dark? This one right here, right? So this is inside the pyramid. So we can't see the pyramid right outside because it's really, really big. But once you go inside the pyramid, that's what it looks like, right? So it has like paintings. It had other objects that were there, and then right in the middle here is the tomb, right? So this is where the king would go, and inside here, inside of the tomb, they would put like maybe all all his things. He had like a lot of gold, maybe like gold necklaces, gold rings, his shoes, his clothes, everything that they think he would need in a different world to live a good life. So every pyramid, and that's where the people were buried, right? And it says that they built extra ones for the relatives. So the king, if he had, let's say, maybe brothers or sisters or kids or even cousins, right? Those were built for them. So whenever they died, that they would go inside another pyramid.
So they all live in the same place and they're all family.
Well, they all live in the same place and they are all family, but then there is other people around there, right? There's like different workers, there's different other people that live there too. But these people were important, right? Because these people were the forest, which means that they were like the king. The king would be like a president, right? So they were like really important. So that's the reason why we're talking about them. But there was a lot of other people, right? There was like the workers that would build the pyramids, that we saw the pictures of the workers that they were on the boat here, right? They're on the boat and taking stones to build the pyramids. So there is a lot of people there, but right now we're only learning about the most important ones. But there was a lot of people, right? It was kind of like a city. Like here where we live, it's a big city, and then, or the country, right? We have a lot of people, but then we have one president, right? And he's very important. So it's the same thing here. There was a lot of people, but right now we were just talking about the most important ones, which were the kings. Does that make sense? Alrighty. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and start with our main idea and supporting details, so that way we're able to summarize our book. I'm gonna go ahead and give you one. I'm gonna go and take these off, and I'm gonna draw it here, and we're gonna go ahead and do it together. Okay. I'm gonna grab these pencils. Let me just. Thank you. Yep, your name up there and the Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and start with our main idea. So do you remember what our main idea was?
Yeah.
What was our main idea? Correct. Ancient Egypt, right? So that's gonna be our main idea. So that's what we're gonna go ahead and write right here in the middle, okay? For your main idea. Make sure we put Egypt, right? So we're putting ancient Egypt, because Egypt is the place of where it's at. good. Okay, so now that's our main idea, right? So that means that's the topic that we're talking about. So the whole book that we just read was about ancient Egypt. So that would be our main idea because that's what we're going to be talking about, okay? So the supporting details would just be important information that we came across the book. So can you think of one thing that we talked about the book that you think it's important?
That when the leader died,
Mm-hmm.
the family died too. They're gonna have the same thing.
They're going to have a pyramid too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very good, we can write that. So we're going to write that maybe on one of your little bubbles, okay? It could be whichever one, because we're going to write different information on each one of them. So we'll put here. So we're going to put when king. Are you able to see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so that's gonna be one of our supporting details, right? So that was an important thing we read of that. He has some for the rest of his relatives, right? So we're just gonna put when the king dies, the family gets pyramids too. And right now we're only writing short little snippets, so that way when we write them, we're gonna make them into complete sentences. Okay. Okay, very good. So let's go ahead. We're gonna go to this page really quick, right here, because if we don't remember some stuff, we could always look back in our book. So that's always a good thing. It's just the first one. So page number 4. Oops, sorry, put inside the book. So this one right here. So do you remember, maybe another important thing that we could put, do you remember where we said Egypt was? So if we read it, it says, thousands of years ago, a group of people lived in the African country of Egypt. What country?
Oh.
The African country. So it was in Africa, right? So Egypt is in Africa. So do you think that's something important that we could include in our summary where Egypt is? Yeah, so I think that could be a good one too. So that's going to be another of our supporting details. Okay, we're just going to put Egypt is in Very good. And then if we look at like this page, do you think maybe this is something important that we could include?
Mm-hmm.
So what can we say about this? Do you remember what this one was? What is this? Do you remember?
A mummy?
A mummy. And when did they make people into mummies? Was it when they were alive?
Yeah.
No. It would be when they have died, right? So they did them into mummies so that way they wouldn't rot. So do you think maybe that's an important detail that we could include? Right? Because I don't think many people do that. I think maybe there could have been other people that have done that, but I think the Egyptians were the ones that usually made their they preserved the body by doing them into mummies, right? So do you think that would be an important thing we could include here? Okay, so let's see.
No, no, it's okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Alright, so they were preserved by mummies, right? So they were turned into, well, they made them into mummies once they died, so that way their body wouldn't rot, right? And then that's the way they would bury them. Okay, so one more thing that we're gonna put another supporting detail that we think would be important from the book. So what about, you can look at the pictures or even this picture here. What was important about this one? Do you remember?
That
Right, or even if you want to even talk about these pictures here, right? So the one that it is, or even this one, if you want to talk about this one, that one was pretty nice too, pretty cool. Or that one. Okay, what about that one? What can we say about the pyramids?
this is
Right, or we could even say how they were built. Do you remember how they were built? How were they built?
this
So like if we look at this one here, sorry, this book is not too good. Here, we'll switch with this one. So remember this one?
yeah.
So how were they built? Do you remember?
Is like this looks like heavy dirt.
They were like heavy stones, right? So did they carry the stones or how did they move them? Looking at the picture, how do you see that they're moving the stones, right? Because all these in here are the stones, right? So where are the stones at?
Right here.
But what are they on top of?
A boat.
A boat, right? So that means that they would build the pyramids and they would move the stones with big boats, right? Do you think that's maybe something important that we could include about how the pyramids were built? Yeah. So what can we say? They were built by the workers, right? And the stones were moved by, it had told us either, like you said, the boat, right? Or using big sleds, right? Do you know what a sled is, right? Kind of like a sled when you go down a snow mountain, you know, a sled, right? So it would be the same thing as sled, but these sleds were really, really, really big. Okay, so that's one thing. That's the last supporting detail that we're gonna write. So then after we could write our paragraph. Okay, so we're gonna put that right over here. So we have that there with birds with big stones, right? And then when we write our paragraph, we can start adding a little bit more details. Like I said, these are just little ideas, little snippets, so that when we write our paragraph, we know that we have some information, but we could turn these into bigger sentences, complete sentences, and then we could always add more information as well, okay? All right, Kalia, so you did a good job on that one. So for your independent work, I'm going to give you this paper. We're going to write maybe 3 to 5 sentences about what we read. Then we're going to draw a nice picture, and then you're going to turn that in. And then for your homework, you're going to get a quiz, and then you'll take that home and then complete it there, okay? And then you'll also be able to take the book home, so don't worry. So that way you could go ahead and look through it, and then that way we're making sure that we are getting the complete answer. So I'm going to give you this. You could put your name and the date, and you could go ahead and start up on it. You could use your thinking map, and it gives us all the ideas that we have written on there, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and give you this, and you could go ahead and start, okay, Kalia? All right.